The 2019 rainfall records paint a sad picture of the state of the water situation facing the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. It was one of the worst rainfall years in 120 years along the southern coast, especially the metro and surrounds. The last 4 years were the first time in history which recorded under 500 millimeters of rainfall. Added to that, the last 2 years appear in the top 10 list of record lows, with 2018 at position 7 and 2019 at position 3. Various areas in the Eastern Cape are currently experiencing a drought, with Graaff-Reinet and Butterworth being two of the worst affected areas. Our reporter Lerato Fekisi filed this report.
Well, the 2019 rainfall figures have been released, and they're not painting a really good picture for the western side of the Eastern Cape. It recorded a rainfall of 57%, and the worst affected has been Makhanda with 46%. But joining me this morning is a man who knows all about the weather, the rainfall, is Garth Sampson from the Weather Service. Garth, let's just speak about the decreased rainfall, the worst of its kind in the past 4 years.
Yes, it's the worst for 120 years, the third worst on record. The worst being 1920, then 1927, and then now 2019. 2018 was also a particularly dry year, but the bad part of it is that the 1920 and 1927 rainfalls occurred in between wet periods. We are now at the end of 7 years of dry period, so it is particularly bad for this year.
We heard last year that Nelson Mandela Bay was also facing its own its own dry patch. How bad are things in this area?
Well, they're extremely bad. If you consider that for the last 7 years, we've had more than 100 millimeters below normal average rainfall. This has put in serious strain on our water resources of the city.
Now, when we speak about Eastern Cape, there's currently a drought happening in the Eastern Cape, the worst of its kind being the Graaff-Reinet. Is that also contributed by the rainfall and the extreme temperatures as well?
Well, extreme temperatures increase evaporation, as so too does wind. So the increased demand on the water resources is also another thing that is a contributing factor.
Another area that's been affected has been Butterworth as well. Know that the dam there is dried up completely. Is there perhaps a turnaround strategy to try solve the drought? And you said earlier on that perhaps a flood is a solution to this drought.
Unfortunately, an extreme event or a flood is the only solution that solves this problem. And the Eastern Cape, since the settlers arrived, they knew about droughts, and the first recorded history was that settlers' homes were flooded after a prolonged drought. So floods always occur after droughts in this region.
Is there any prediction now as to when the flood will take place, and will it happen throughout the Eastern Cape or just specific areas in the Eastern Cape?
That is the million-dollar question. We do know that there will be a severe event in the future. History will repeat itself. The big question is when. And if we knew that, that's the million-dollar question.
And the drought in the Eastern Cape, do you see that still going on for some time, especially when you look at areas like Graaff-Reinet, which is a farming area, Butterworth, Queenstown, also facing a drought? Is there perhaps an end to this drought anytime soon?
Well, on the short term, we've got some predictions for later this week of some nice thunderstorms, but we doubt that this will solve the problem in the long term. There are predictions on the seasonal forecast for some nice rain coming in March, April, but we'll have to wait and see if that happens. But if we look at previous predictions, it could continue another 3, 5, 7 years. We'll have to wait and see, but it will be broken by extreme event, as we have seen on the figures that I've shown you earlier.
Garth, what role is global warming and climate change also contributing to the drought that we see in the Eastern Cape and the country as well?
Well, I'm no expert on climate change, but the advocates of climate change say that peaks will be higher and troughs will be lower. Now, if we look at the peak of 2012, it was extremely high, one of the highest non-flood years on record, and the trough that we are experiencing in 2018, 2019 was extremely low. So if the advocates of climate change are true, the next flood could be even worse than the previous ones that we have had.
Then lastly, Garth, with the water scarcity, what can we as residents do to make sure that we conserve as much water as possible?
Well, this is not a problem that's going to go away tomorrow. We will get an extreme event. We will possibly get a flood. Thereafter, it's going to return to a dry period. So unless we change our way of thinking of conserving water permanently, not only in dry periods, this is going to continue. But we must also be aware that we are prepared for when flooding or extreme events do occur, that stormwater drains are cleaned, our gutters are clean, and the like. But this is going to be an ongoing problem, water scarcity.